The story of a Tory donor allegedly making racist comments about Diane Abbott has been dominating headlines. On BBC Newsnight, two prominent black Tories were invited to comment. First up was Siobhan Aarons, chair of the Tory Reform Group and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism for Equality. She was asked why it took the Tories 24 hours to condemn the comments.
24 hours for a story that was 5 years old. It's old news, and yet they're making it new news. And that is really frustrating. I think it's really frustrating for every single Conservative activist from a BAME background. And it's really frustrating as a black woman to become news because of a white man. Whereas instead, we should be focusing on the amazing successes of people like Diane Abbott, who broke glass ceilings for us, regardless of our politics or if we're doing something else, but to actually be able to look at women like her, British black women, and shout about their successes rather than only becoming news because of a white man. I'm over it. Let's move on.
That was like Cirque du Soleil in terms of like mental acrobatics to come up with an answer that isn't, wow, my party are really screwed up on this question. Like, it's really screwed up that the party that I am defending willingly accepts millions of pounds of donations from people who speak about black women like that. And maybe there's some kind of relationship between the politics of my party and the fact that men like that want that party to win and want to see that party succeed. Maybe it's because they actually both think the same thing about black women. But no, of course, we're going to turn this into, why are we making news because of a white man? I mean, it's because Diane Abbott is trying to make us aware of the fact that the party in government is willingly co-signing this kind of politics, and that has an effect on all black women in the country. It's not doesn't just have an effect on Diane Abbott. It has effect on all black women in this country who see that and take a very clear message about what the governing party thinks of them. Right. Going back onto that clip, it was the first time I'd seen that clip, so you got my passionate reaction to it. Newsnight also had on Wilfred Emmanuel Jones, a former Tory candidate who co-founded a group trying to help the party engage with black voters. Let's see what he says.
This is a successful attempt of the left to weaponize race, because what it's done is left a real bad feeling amongst a lot of black people thinking the Conservative Party is not for them. And so people like us who are proud Conservatives have a harder job to do because they weaponize this using race.
They might push back on the weaponizing accusation.
Who will push back?
The left.
Well, they are weaponizing.
The only reason this is a story is because Frank Hester said this
5 years ago. If you said it today, they understand us having this debate. The climate was very different 5 years ago.
Was it?
Oh, but very, very much so.
They're talking about this as if this is some distant past that the Conservatives have left behind. Look, they have still accepted money from this man. $1 million in the past year they've accepted. 10 million in the past year they've accepted. That they and have gone on to say, they've had spokespeople on the media saying, if this man wanted to offer us another 10 million tomorrow, we would take it. They are doubling down. So the idea that this is some far gone past, a whole 5 years ago, is absurd. The whole point is that this is it wouldn't resonate so much if people didn't feel like it was reflective of the Conservative Party's politics. And the only thing that I would disagree with here is that I don't think that the Labour Party have treated Diane Abbott particularly any better, at least this iteration of the Labour Party. That's the only thing that, if I was a black Conservative trying to kind of defend that on Newsnight, that's probably what I would go for rather than doing whatever happened over there. Let's continue and finish off this car crash of a Newsnight interview.
I do not want to come on here and actually defend him because everybody would accept that actually it was racist what it says.
Let me ask you about how Number 10 have handled it.
Well, Number 10, basically, they handled it very badly because, as you said, they'd actually stepped on it. But when it comes to race, people are really, really terrified about what is the correct language to use. So is it about somebody saying something racist? Does that then imply that they're racist? And this is one of the problems we have in this country about people are really terrified of what is the right language to use.
I understand that. Let me read you the full quote again. This is what Frank Hester is alleged to have said about Diane Abbott. It's like trying not to be racist, but you see Diane Abbott on the TV and you just you just want to hate all black women because she's there. And I don't hate all black women at all, but I think she should be shot. It's not difficult to describe that as racist.
Nobody's saying that isn't racist. I'm saying those are racist. But
you're saying people are scared to say it.
No. What I'm not. People are not scared to say that somebody has said something racist. It's when you then accuse somebody saying something is racist that person is therefore racist. I give you an example of that. I've been in front of people who have been out canvassing for me, and they've used the word, I don't know if you can say it to the neighbour before people are getting upset about it, but they've used phrases like nigger in the woodpile. Now, somebody might accuse that person of being racist. That person isn't racist. They're using the incorrect language. And I think we have to get down to a point of when is it that somebody's used the incorrect language and when is it that somebody's racist? And I think those are two different things. And this is why we're all dancing around the edges here. No one's accusing...
And don't hate me, but I am going to apologise on your behalf for using the M-word, because some people will be offended.
Well, that's fine,
by that.
but
I'm not dancing around that.
I know that every producer took in a big, it was just like, held their breath when he went. Now, I don't know if you're allowed to say this. Everyone was like, don't say it. I think it's very interesting because what comes across there is, he's saying that just because someone uses racist language doesn't mean that they are racist. Now, first of all, this is a symptom of a problem that we have where saying that someone is racist or saying that something is racist is seen as some kind of moral insult, or it's seen as some kind of personal moral failing. Now, obviously, it's understandable why people see that this way, but we also need to understand that we live in a racist society. We live in a society where the economy, public space, public infrastructure, representation, culture is racialized and organizes people into, racial ways of thinking. And therefore, it would be very strange for all of the individuals within that to somehow be completely immune from internalizing any of that. And so this idea of you can use racist language, but that doesn't mean that you're racist. It brings it down to this question of what is an individual person's intention or moral purity, when really what we should be talking about is what is the effects of the fact that our society is like this? What are the effects of the fact that the party and government, a man who speaks like that in such a degrading and dehumanizing way about Black women and who takes, someone he disagrees with and makes it into this kind of racist, vitriolic feeling and statement. What does it mean that our party and government, that he feels so aligned with our party and government that he is handing over £10 million to them, and that party is happy to accept it, not only back then, but would be happy to accept it in the future? It tells us that there is an alignment of values, and we're not just talking about language here. We see it in the kind of world, the kind of country that the Conservatives have created, that kind of ideology is reflected in there. So it's not just about language, and it's very convenient to kind of make this a conversation about the wrong words and the right words, or to make it a conversation about someone's individual moral purity. This is about what are the effects of this politics that we are seeing every day on a structural level, on an institutional level, on the lives of Black people and ethnic minorities in this country. The evidence is clear. So let's see again where things go next. We've got still getting more out of this Newsnight appearance. Let's see that final clip.
Why do you think it is seemingly difficult for Number 10 to say this was racist?
I don't know. And I think that's the hardest thing, right? Thank you for inviting me here tonight to be able to talk about these things. But I can't answer for Number 10. Number 10 needs to answer for Number 10. I can only represent myself, my community, and do so in a positive way. And I am tired of talking about these things and these people. And that's the only time I have an opportunity to talk about, successful or just ordinary, being successful by being ordinary British Black women. So I don't want to talk about that. I know we have to face it. I'm not trying to not face it, but I actually want to be able to celebrate. This is the month of International Women's Day and make it the whole month. We've just had Mothering Sunday. You know, if we piggyback on the US having their Black History Month last month, for example, why is it that I am here talking about Hester and Number 10 when we have so many British Black women that we should be celebrating?
You're there because you claim to have the same politics as this party, and this is the party in government that is shaping the lives of all of us, and that's why this matters, and that's why we have to have this conversation. Elena, what do you think of that bizarre interview?
There's a couple of points. I mean, the first thing I go with is I totally agree with you. 100%. You're so erudite in explaining the difference between the kind of idealist approach to analysing this with the materialist approach to analysing it under this kind of what I would like this kind of culture and neoliberalism, where everything is an individual failing. Everything is like a personal expression of someone's personal moral framework, rather than the effects of a structure or a system or the kind of society that we live in and the material effects of those failures. Like there's a really great part in ContraPoint's video on cancellation where she talks about this essentialization that we have of people. When we take things that people say that are racist, like these comments were racist, we want to dismiss an individual as being a racist. Well, that's a bad person doing a bad thing in this really kind of, in this microcosm of an individual, rather than what does that say about how we've managed to get to this position where somebody can say something like this, then these views can be held and these ideologies can permeate through society. And I think that's a really good that's a really good summary of that on your end there. I appreciate that. One thing I would say though is I think that one discussion that we need to have broadly on the left as well is that there's always this two sides of a discussion about kind of the liberal identity politics of something, which is usually from something that extricates class from discussion, and there are class reductionists who refuse to include social elements in the way that they look at systems of power we have in this country. And we can see in somebody there who is part of a kind of the higher kind of class echelons of society, you get these realizations that these class systems that you belong to are not going to protect you. They're not going to protect you fully against the effects of societal racism, structural racism, and white supremacy in this country. Whereas kind of the liberal identity politics people will only see this as being an issue of an individual racist. And the class reductionists will say, well, actually, it's just as class position. We actually have a proper intersectional analysis of how we can get to this point. Then that's the only way we can actually achieve true liberation, true emancipation, rather than looking at through an individual kind of myopic framework on either side of that discussion.